If you own a patio, at some point you'll probably find slabs moving and rocking, which is annoying to say the least. So today I'm going to show you two ways of fixing moving slabs. The first one being the long way and the second one being a lot shorter, which I like to call the proper DIY way. The traditional but long way to repair wobbly slabs is to take out the slab and the bedding mortar and relay the whole lot. The biggest risk you have when you're doing this is that you make so much vibration that you debond the adjacent slabs around it and cause a bigger problem for yourself than when you started. That's why I would always recommend stitch drilling around the perimeter before breaking out the bedding mortar. Anyway, once you get the bedding out, either manually or with a breaker, you need to compact the surface, mix some mortar either in a mixer or by hand, place it back in the hole, seal your slab with a cement slurry and then bed it back in place. All this will take you a couple of hours at least, plus the cleanup. So that's the hard way, and now I'm going to show you the easy way. Well, quite simply, the easy way is not to break out the bedding of the patio slab. That just causes you an awful lot of grief and an awful lot of work just to get back to where you sort of started. So the easy way is essentially just sticking down the slab. You can see my one here. So this is pretty typical of the slabs I've got that are moving. They've just debonded, although they're actually sitting at the right level. So all I really want to do is to stick that down permanently. Now, you can try grab adhesives, the sort of things that go into a skeleton gun, but I've never had much success with those. Because it's always damp, the chances of getting it actually bonded permanently is pretty slim. But I found a product that actually works, and it's this. It's the Gorilla Glue PU adhesive. Now, before I show you how I use it with this, go and see me in the workshop where I'll explain all of the details about this glue and how it works. Polyurethane is normally a two-part material that when you combine it, it expands and foams up and increases in size. You would have seen all those insulation type videos on YouTube where it all gets really, really big and you cut it down. This is polyurethane or PU glue, but it's only a single part, and I can only think that this expands when it hits water or moisture. Hence why it says on the instructions you need to dampen the area to activate the glue. Now, the one great thing about this is it expands and fills all kinds of nooks and crannies, and it's really sticky at the same time. So I just want to show you what this does when it's activated and whether using water and making it damp actually makes any difference. So what I've got here is I've got two blocks exactly the same size, and all I'm going to do is put a dollop of this glue on each around about the same size and then see what happens over the next hour or two. But the first one I'm going to put on this very dry block. This is a bit of 3x2 that has been sitting in my workshop for many months now, so it's probably just about as dry as you can get it. And on the second one I'm actually going to wet the block so it's nice and moist underneath and put a bit of water on top and see if it makes any difference. I want to get about the same size blob. And just for good measure, I'm even going to put some water on the top of it so it's got plenty of moisture to react with. There we are. So all we're going to do is have a look at these over the next hour or so and see if there's a difference. So that's how the glue expanded in the first hour and 40 minutes, and everything's pretty solid actually. So these samples look like standard polyurethane. They've got that sort of yellowy colour and they've got lots of bubbles inside them and they're pretty hard now. What I didn't realise at the time was there's actually a hole in this block, so it's run through the hole and now stuck itself to the bench, which I'll sort out in a minute. You would have seen in the time lapse that the one that I put water on did react quicker in the first half an hour to an hour. But if you do want it to react quickly, definitely if you put some water on, it gets to where it should be quicker. Let's just take this one off the bench. The other things that this demonstrates quite nicely is firstly, the amount this product expands. They say 3 times, but to be honest with you, it looks more like 4 or 5 to me, which means if you're going to be putting it between your bedding mortar and your paving slab, it's going to expand into all the nooks and crannies and cover quite a large area. Secondly, It also demonstrates that it's not affected by water. If anything, water accelerates the reaction and gets you to where you want to be quicker, which is really important if you're working in a UK garden, because the chance of it's going to be dry for days on end is pretty slim. So you don't want to be using something that is sensitive to water and won't work in water. Right, let's go back to the garden. I'll show you how I apply this. So time to use it in practice, and this is generally the routine that I've been following with my slabs that are just wobbly and all over the place. The first thing I've got to do is really clean it out, and that sometimes means washing it out or brushing it out. I think it goes without saying that this method doesn't work on slabs that have been laid purely on sand, or where the bedding mortar has failed and moved either up or down. My bedding mortar is stable, and the problem is just that the slab has debonded and debris has worked its way underneath, causing this wobble. So all I'm trying to do is get any grit or debris out, and any soil, any organic matter that doesn't want to be in there, and just also cleaning the underside of the slab as well, which is pretty clean actually. Just before I put the glue down, I'm just going to check again that it's sitting flat. Yeah, which it is. So now put on some of this glue. While I'm waiting for it to get to the bottom there so I can squeeze it out, I'm going to be aiming at the high points, the points that obviously touching the slab. I'm not going to be aiming at the low points. It's just going to take too much material. So anything that looks like it's been touching the slab, especially around the perimeter, maybe a couple in the middle, that's where I'm going to apply the glue. And all I'm going to do is to put a little bit of a dollop there, probably the size of maybe a 10p piece, and then go around the perimeter. At this point, I think it's better to do lots of smaller areas than a couple of bigger areas. Around the perimeter and then some in the middle is really what I'm aiming at here. There's some that are a bit lower, like this one. Not sure if that's ever going to come up and touch a slab, but it doesn't matter. Probably the more you put down, the more smaller areas you put down, the better. But I've got maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 there. All of those are going to expand quite nicely. And I've got them at each corner and the perimeter and in the middle. So all I do now is sit this back down where it came from. The great thing about using this glue as well is that there's no rush. I mean, you can't spend hours doing it, but whether it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes isn't going to make a lot of difference. So that's essentially bedded back to where we found it 5 minutes ago. I know it's sitting on the glue because of where I put it. For those glue spots that aren't touching it at the moment, as they expand, they definitely will be. Now, the only thing I'm always a little bit worried about is it expanding and pushing it up. Now, maybe with slabs of this size, because of the weight, the chance of it actually rising up a few millimeters is pretty slim. However, if you've got something of weight about, probably best to use it. This is just a bag of sand, which means I don't think that's going anywhere. As the glue expands, rather than pushing it up, it'll go left and right into the nooks and crannies. Right, that's one done. Let's do another. So here's another one. This is a little diddly 300 square one that I keep walking on, that moves all the time, that's starting to wind me up. And once again, it's covered in soil. It's right next to the grass, so it's debonded. Everything's washed into it. Let's clean this one up. So all I'm going to do is clean away all this mud that's washed into it over the last few years. And on a day like this, it's actually showers today, so it's raining on and off all day. So if I had to use glue that actually didn't like the water, I don't think I would get very far. So there you go, that's good enough. Because it reacts with air and moisture, you really want to make sure that the top is nice and sealed and on when you're not using it. Because this glue isn't particularly cheap. I think a bottle like this is about £15, which makes wood glue look really cheap. So yeah, £15. You don't want to come back to it in 2 months' time and for it all to be reacted and gone off. Put some in here, straight in water, and it'll still stick. So there you go, that's maybe a dozen different points all around, mainly around the perimeter, but then some on the inside as well. And then all I'm going to do is pop that back there. It'll just sit there. I think once again I'll just get a little bit of weight, maybe a couple of blocks to put on that, leave it an hour and a half, and that will be fixed. I use this method in part when I recently laid some new paving, half on and half off existing bedding mortar, to stick the slab to the existing so I didn't have any wobbles between the new and old. This was a lot quicker because it saved me breaking out the existing bedding mortar. Once again, I weighed the slab down to make sure it didn't move at all, and the whole thing worked out quite nicely. And lastly, just as an experiment, I've got 2 bits of broken slab here that I've had from other projects, and I thought it'd be interesting just to glue these together in the same way that I've just glued down my patio, just to see, once it's gone off, how difficult it is to remove. So all I'm going to do is stick these together in the same way. It's nice and wet, they're relatively clean. So once again, I'm putting down glue around about the size of a 10p piece, just around the perimeter. What's that? 8 round the perimeter. Let's stick one in the middle for good measure. There we go. Is it going to stick a bit like that? So what I'm going to do, I think, for this one is just to leave it without any weight on, just to see if it prizes itself up, which it might do, but that will also help us to get a wedge underneath, just to see how well that has stuck. So give that an hour and a half and we'll come back to that. So since I've laid these slabs, it's been absolutely chucking it down for the last 24 hours. So it's now 2 days later, and although it's still really windy, at least it's stopped raining. So let's have a look at what we've got. You can see here where the foam has expanded and come out the sides. Just see it peeking out there, which is a good sign. But the main thing is it wobbling. That is completely fixed and glued in and completely stable. That is just such a good way of solving that problem. Let's just have a quick look at this smaller one. There is no way I'm lifting that, and it's obviously not moving anywhere now. That's pretty well fixed. Yeah. And lastly, let's just see how much force it takes to split these two. This is obviously a couple of days old now, but the one thing I have found about this glue is it's really quite sticky. So let's just see if we can split this. The first thing I notice is that I have actually got a 1 to 2 millimeter gap between these 2 slabs. So it does look like it's opened up a little bit. And what I thought I'd do is I've got a couple of shims here that I might be able to wedge in. Oh, that's not a good start. About a timber wedge. Maybe that would work. we go. Hey. There you go. Wow. So that looks like pretty good coverage. It's obviously spread out quite a lot. And although, there you go. That's how it's adhering to stone. So looking at that, I would say a small blob isn't going to stick very much. But if you put enough blobs on a slab, like a dozen, 15 or 20, it is enough to hold them together and to keep your pavers down. I hope you've enjoyed this video and it's given you some ideas of what you can do with PU glue. I will see you next time.